You step outside, just as the mail carrier drops the day's letters into your mailbox. A few bills, some junk mail, and then, a thick envelope with an official-looking seal. You pick it up, feeling the weight of it in your hand. There's something unsettling about the way it feels. It's not a simple notice, but something that holds power, something that could change everything. Your fingers tremble slightly as you rip open the envelope. Inside, a neatly printed eviction notice from your HOA. The words are clear, sharp, cold. You are hereby notified to vacate your property within 30 days. Failure to comply will result in the involvement of armed enforcement. Immediate action is required. You blink at the words, reading them over and over. It feels like the ground beneath you is shifting. This wasn't supposed to happen. Your family's home, the garden you've spent years cultivating, your safe space, now being threatened by a group of strangers with the power to take it all away. You take a deep breath, trying to steady your racing heart. But then, your gaze drifts across your backyard, where your wife, Sarah, is tending to your garden, completely unaware of the storm brewing. You fold the letter carefully and slip it into your pocket. This isn't just about property. It's personal now. And you can't let them take what's yours. You step inside, still clutching the eviction notice, your mind racing. The house feels smaller now, as if the walls are closing in. But then you hear it, the sound of Sarah's boots hitting the hardwood floor as she walks into the kitchen. She's just returned from a run, her military-grade gear and composure never failing to impress. A smile forms on her face when she sees you, but it fades the moment she notices your expression. There's no need for words, she can tell something is wrong. You hand her the letter without saying a word. She reads it, her face flickering between concern and something else, something sharper. She looks up at you, her eyes calm but intense. "Are they serious?" she asks, her voice steady, betraying no sign of panic. You nod. "They sent armed enforcers. They want us gone. And fast." Sarah places the letter on the counter, her fingers lightly grazing the edge. There's a pause, just long enough for the weight of the situation to sink in. She leans against the counter, crossing her arms in a relaxed stance that only someone with her training can manage. "Well," she says after a beat, "I've dealt with worse than a few hired guns." She cracks a faint smile, but there's no humor in it. Her eyes lock onto yours, and the calm confidence radiates from her like a shield. You can't help but marvel at the woman you've married. Sarah isn't just any former soldier, she's a Green Beret sniper, trained to remain calm under pressure, to make critical decisions with a level head in the most hostile of situations. Her skills, her focus, they're a world away from the average civilian. And right now you realize you're not just facing a legal battle. You're facing a battle for your home, and she's more than equipped for the fight. "You won't have to fight alone," she says softly. "We'll handle this together." Her words feel like a lifeline. But as she says them, there's no doubt in her voice. There's only the steady resolve of someone who's been trained to face much bigger threats than a corporate eviction notice. You feel a renewed sense of determination. With Sarah by your side, you know you won't let this stand. Whatever the HOA has planned, they'll regret underestimating you both. The following week feels like a pressure cooker, each passing day adding another layer of heat. The HOA, led by its ruthless president, Victoria Reed, has made it clear, this isn't just about the property anymore. It's about control, and they'll stop at nothing to get it. Flashbacks flood your mind as you recall the initial conflict, the subtle yet unmistakable shift when the HOA began targeting your family. It all started innocently enough with a letter, just like the one in your hand. At first, they had issues with your fence being slightly too tall, or the trees you planted along the edge of your yard. But then, it escalated. The HOA started finding fault with your garden, the one your family had worked on for years, nurturing it into something that felt like a personal sanctuary, not just a backyard. The turning point came when Victoria Reed herself showed up at your door, clipboard in hand, with her usual air of superiority. She looked at your lush garden, the vegetable beds, the blooming flowers, and called it an eyesore. "Do you really think this mess belongs in Cascade Heights?" Victoria sneered, her eyes scanning the carefully cultivated chaos that you nurtured for years. "I think it belongs in my backyard," you replied, standing tall. "No, no," she said, making a dismissive gesture toward the garden. "This violates our community standards. And frankly, it's bringing down property values." You stood there stunned. How could anyone, let alone the president of an HOA, think that something so simple, so vital to your family's well-being, could be considered a problem? The thought of letting go of your garden, of losing this small piece of your life, filled you with an immediate sense of dread. But it didn't stop there. Victoria started spreading rumors about your garden being a hazard, claiming it attracted rodents and bugs, and suggested it might even cause flooding. The community started whispering behind your back, half of them convinced by her manipulative rhetoric, while the other half just shrugged, unsure but compliant. It became clear, this wasn't about a garden. This was about control. And the more you tried to stand your ground, the more Victoria pushed. In HOA meetings, she quietly manipulated the board, turning them against you. But it wasn't just about your garden anymore. She began to question your entire right to live in your own home. The eviction notice was a final blow, a personal declaration that no one, no matter how hard they fought, could stand against her will. You and Sarah started gathering your evidence, photos of your garden through the seasons, petitions from neighbors who supported your family, and records of all the legal measures the HOA had taken to undermine you. But it felt like fighting a shadow, a battle against an invisible force that had deep roots in the neighborhood. Victoria wasn't just playing by the rules. She was bending them, breaking them, and using them to fit her own vision of the perfect community, a vision that didn't have room for you. And it wasn't just the garden that made her want you gone. You'd learned about her connections to a developer, a man she'd been cozying up to for months, a developer who had already eyed your land for its prime location. This wasn't about property standards. This was about money, about her friends getting richer while your family lost everything. And as you stand there, looking out the window at the manicured lawns of your neighbors, you realize this fight is bigger than you thought. This is a battle of survival, of legacy, and of exposing the corruption that runs through the heart of the HOA. And you're ready. Ready to fight. Ready to expose the truth. But you won't do it alone. You've got Sarah by your side, and she's a force of nature all on her own. The air in the HOA meeting room is thick with tension as you walk in, the harsh fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The room is filled with the usual board members, Victoria sitting at the head of the table, her tight smile barely masking the satisfaction in her eyes. Martha, your former neighbor, is sitting beside her, nervously flipping through a stack of papers. The rest of the room is a sea of uncertain faces, but you can feel the eyes of a few of your neighbors, those who still remember your family fondly, burning with a mix of confusion and concern. You take your seat at the long table, the heavy eviction notice sitting in front of you like a weight on your chest. You've come prepared, a folder full of photos, records, and petitions from 12 of your neighbors who've spoken up in support of your garden, your family, and your right to live on your own property. Victoria's cold gaze meets yours as she speaks first, her voice dripping with feigned politeness. "Mr. Richardson," she begins, "I'm sure you understand the importance of maintaining community standards. You've been a good neighbor in the past, but we can't overlook the fact that your garden is posing a significant risk to the property values around you." You open your folder and slide a series of photos across the table, showing your garden through the seasons, lush, vibrant, teeming with life. "This is what we've cultivated here. It's not an eyesore, it's a sanctuary. It's a part of the community, whether you choose to see it that way or not." Victoria barely glances at the photos before her smile falters. "I'm afraid your sentimentality is clouding your judgment, Mr. Richardson. We're not just talking about aesthetic preferences. We're talking about potential safety hazards. The presence of standing water, the vegetation, it creates an environment ripe for mosquitoes and other pests, not to mention the risk of flooding. We can't have that in Cascade Heights." You lean forward, your voice steady but full of conviction. "There's never been a single flood incident. And as for mosquitoes, I've planted native species that naturally deter pests. The garden isn't a problem, It's an asset. But before you can continue, Martha suddenly speaks up, her voice quivering. I've noticed more mosquitoes lately, she says, her eyes avoiding yours. The water, the plants, it's too much. You feel your blood run cold as you realize what's happening. This isn't about flooding or property values. Martha's voice, shaky as it is, confirms your suspicion. Victoria has been manipulating her, too. The HOA president has been feeding the board false information, turning neighbors against you, one by one. Victoria shifts in her seat, her eyes narrowing. The facts are clear, Mr. Richardson. We can't ignore them just because you're attached to a patch of dirt. The community's safety comes first. And if we don't act now, we'll risk something far worse than just an increase in pests. The room is tense now. Some of the board members are whispering to each other, exchanging uncertain glances. But there's no doubt in your mind, Victoria is playing this as a power move, trying to force you out to benefit her own hidden agenda. I demand to see the geological survey, you say, your voice gaining strength. If this is such a serious risk, I want to see the documentation. I want to know who conducted the survey and when they visited my property. Victoria smiles, but there's no warmth in it. I'm afraid the report is confidential. It was done to protect the surveyor from unnecessary interference. It's a matter of safety, not personal property. That's when Mr. Peterson, the retired lawyer from down the street, pipes up. Hold on a minute, he says, his voice authoritative. Homeowners have a right to see the reports that impact their property. That's the law. Victoria's face tightens, her composure slipping for just a second. We're not here to debate procedure, she snaps. We're here to make decisions for the good of the community. You stand up, the anger building within you. This isn't about safety, and it never was. This is about property value, and the way you've been manipulating this entire community for your own gain. You're trying to turn my home into a cash cow for your developer friends. Victoria's smile falters, and for a brief moment, the facade cracks. She knows she's losing control. Without hesitation, you press on. I want a full transparency review of all the documents you've received, all the surveys, all the reports. I'm not leaving here until I see everything. A murmur of agreement ripples through a few of the neighbors, but the majority remains silent, too intimidated to speak up. Victoria slams her hand on the table, her patience running thin. All in favor of proceeding with the removal of the spring and garden, she says coldly, raising her hand. 7 hands shoot up without hesitation, the board members, and a few of their close allies. It's a done deal. The motion passes. As the meeting adjourns and people begin to file out, you catch Martha's eye. She lingers for a moment, looking almost ashamed. You approach her. Martha, why are you doing this? You used to bring your grandkids to feed the ducks by my spring. You used to. She cuts you off, her voice barely above a whisper. I need the board position, Alex. I need that extra room for when my daughter comes to visit. Victoria promised me that if I supported her, she'd approve my extension. Your heart sinks. Victoria has bought her vote with promises of favors, just as she's done with others in the community. This whole thing is rigged. The realization hits hard. The HOA is more than just a neighborly association. It's a machine built to crush anyone who dares challenge it. And you've just been caught in its gears. The fight has only just begun. It's 2 days later, and the heavy weight of the HOA's decision still hangs in the air like an impending storm. Your mind races, trying to think of any legal loopholes, any way to stop this madness, but deep down, you know the fight has become personal. They've crossed the line. That afternoon, you're at the kitchen table, reviewing more documents, trying to find something that could help, when you hear the unmistakable roar of engines outside. At first, you think it's just a neighbor's lawnmower or a delivery truck. But then the noise grows louder, more intense. You freeze. Something feels off. You glance out the window, your pulse quickening as you see 2 black SUVs pulling into your driveway. They're sleek, ominous, and far too coordinated to be a coincidence. Your heart sinks as a group of men in tactical gear steps out. They're armed, big men, wearing bulletproof vests, carrying rifles. It's not just an eviction anymore. It's a threat. They're here to intimidate, to show you they mean business. Stay inside, Sarah, you whisper urgently, your voice tight with dread. You don't want to involve her, not yet. Not until you know what's going on. But Sarah's already beside you, her eyes narrowing as she watches the men approach. There's no fear in her stance, only focus. This is exactly the kind of situation she's been trained for. You can almost see the switch flip inside her, her military instincts kicking in. Sarah, you repeat, but she's already moving toward the door. I know what I'm doing, she says, her voice steady, reassuring. I've been in worse situations than this. You nod, unable to argue. Sarah has faced far more dangerous situations than a few armed thugs on your front lawn. But this feels different. This feels like a battle over everything, your home, your legacy, and your family. The men stop just short of the porch, their eyes scanning the house. One of them, a tall man with a scar running down his face, steps forward, holding up a piece of paper. This is your final warning, Mr. Richardson, he says, his tone cold and authoritative. Vacate the property immediately, or we will use force. Sarah steps outside, her posture calm, but there's a palpable air of authority about her. She doesn't need to say a word for them to know who's in charge now. You're trespassing, Sarah says, her voice smooth, but edged with a quiet threat. You have no right to be here, and you don't scare me. The men hesitate, looking at each other, clearly not expecting someone like her to stand her ground. Sarah's eyes lock onto the tall enforcer with the scar, her gaze unwavering, and for a brief moment he falters. I don't think you fully understand what's happening here, she continues, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. You're not just dealing with a family in the middle of a property dispute. You're dealing with someone who's been trained to handle situations a lot worse than this. So I suggest you turn around and leave, before things escalate. The enforcer looks at his team, clearly unsure of how to proceed. The air is thick with tension, but Sarah's presence alone is enough to make them hesitate. I said leave, Sarah repeats, her hand resting casually on her hip, near the small of her back where you know she keeps her concealed carry. The men exchange uncertain glances. They weren't expecting a Green Beret sniper standing in their way, and they certainly weren't expecting her to call their bluff. One of the other enforcers, a younger man, steps forward, looking nervous. We've got orders to clear the house. No one's backing down. Sarah's eyes flick to him, piercing and unwavering. You don't have orders from me. So take it up with your boss. But understand this, if you step foot on this property, you'll be met with more resistance than you bargained for. The tension is at a breaking point, each second stretching longer than the last. But just as it seems like things might get violent, Sarah's phone buzzes in her pocket. She pulls it out, glancing at the screen. Her expression doesn't change, but there's a glimmer of something in her eyes, some kind of understanding. Without warning, she steps back, her movements swift and deliberate. You've been warned, she says, her voice low but firm. Now get off my property. For a long moment, the men just stand there, stunned. Then, the scarred enforcer signals to the others. They turn and retreat, walking back to their vehicles in an orderly fashion. No one speaks. No one moves until they've driven off down the street, their engines fading into the distance. Sarah watches them go, her expression unreadable. But you know her well enough to recognize the quiet storm inside her. You okay? You ask, finally exhaling the breath you didn't know you were holding. She nods, but there's a flicker of something in her eyes, a mix of resolve and something darker, more dangerous. They'll be back, she says, her voice quieter now. And when they do, we'll be ready. As you both watch the SUVs disappear, you realize that this fight isn't going to be over quickly. The HOA may have sent armed enforcers today, but tomorrow, it's your turn. With Sarah by your side, you know you're not just fighting for your property, you're fighting for justice, and you won't back down. Not now. Not ever. The next few days pass in a blur. You and Sarah spend your time digging through records, meeting with lawyers, and preparing for the worst. Every time you think you've found a way out, it feels like another obstacle rises up to block your path. The HOA isn't just going to let this go, they're going to keep pushing, using every ounce of power they have to force you and your family out of the neighborhood. But as the pressure builds, you start uncovering something darker. Something far worse than a simple dispute over property. It begins with a phone call from Mr. Peterson, the retired lawyer who had stood up for you during the last HOA meeting. His voice is low and urgent as he speaks. Alex, you need to look into the financials of the HOA. There's something off. I've been digging through the records, and it doesn't add up. You're immediately on alert. What do you mean? I think Victoria's been skimming funds from the HOA. The accounts don't match up. And I found a connection, her brother-in-law's drainage company. He's getting all sorts of contracts, even though he's not qualified. Something doesn't feel right. That's the first crack in the facade. You know that if you can expose the HOA's financial corruption, you'll have real ammunition to fight back. But you can't do it alone. You bring the information to Sarah, and she's immediately on board. She's the one who suggests you start at the county records office. There's something about the way she says it, like she's been through this kind of thing before, like she's ready to take down a giant. The next morning, you head to the county office, your heart pounding as you wade through dusty files and boxes of old records. Hours pass, but you don't stop. You're looking for one thing, the trail of money that leads to Victoria and her shady business dealings. Then you find it. A set of financial records from Cascade Heights, dated just a few months ago. You dig deeper, and the truth starts to surface. The HOA has been funneling funds into Victoria's brother-in-law's company, Cascade Drainage Solutions, under the guise of emergency maintenance. But the amounts are staggering. And that's not all. You pull out a separate set of records, dated just a few weeks earlier, revealing that the drainage company had received an absurd contract to manage water issues in the neighborhood, right after the HOA started pushing for the removal of your spring. But it's even worse than you imagine. The company was charging exorbitant fees for services that had never been performed. And now, you realize what this entire scheme was about. Victoria wasn't just after your property, she was using the HOA to profit off of it. By forcing out homeowners like you and redoing the drainage system, she could push through expensive contracts with her brother-in-law's company, lining their pockets while the neighborhood was left to deal with the fallout. Your stomach turns as you piece everything together. The HOA had been planning to buy up properties at a low cost, then sell them for a huge profit after upgrading the infrastructure. Your spring wasn't the problem, it was an obstacle to their plan. With this new information in hand, you call Sarah. You were right. It's all connected. Victoria's been feeding her brother-in-law, and he's been draining us all dry. Sarah's voice is calm but filled with purpose. We've got everything we need. Now we take it public. But before you can even think of how to do that, you hear a noise outside. A car pulling into the driveway. You step toward the window, and your heart sinks when you see the familiar black SUVs again. This time, they've brought more enforcers, more men in tactical gear. But something's different. This isn't just an intimidation tactic. This time, they're here to escalate. You exchange a glance with Sarah. She nods once, the same determination you saw earlier flooding her face again. Let's finish this. With the documents in hand, you prepare for the showdown. You know that what you've uncovered could be the key to exposing Victoria's corruption. But as the SUVs come to a stop in front of your house, you can't help but feel that the real battle is just beginning. The tension is unbearable. The black SUVs are parked in your driveway once again, but this time, it's different. This isn't just a message from the HOA anymore, it's an all-out attempt to break your family. You stand by the window, your hand gripping the edge of the frame, as Sarah steps beside you. She's already taking the lead, calm but ready for whatever comes next. Outside, the enforcers move toward the front door, their boots crunching on the gravel driveway. They're armed, of course, but it's not just the weapons that make you uneasy, it's the cold determination in their movements. They're here for one thing, to force your family out, no matter the cost. Sarah glances at you, her eyes cool and calculating. Stay inside, she says, her voice steady, almost too calm. But there's no way you're going to sit this one out. No, you respond, your voice firm. I'm not letting you do this alone. She doesn't argue, but you both know that when it comes to this fight, every moment counts. You step outside, standing beside her as the men reach the base of the porch. Their eyes scan over the two of you, clearly surprised to see you standing there, not backing down, not intimidated. The scarred enforcer, the one who seemed like their leader, steps forward, the rest of them staying in position behind him. He's trying to look imposing, but there's something in his eyes, something that hints at uncertainty. Mr. Richardson, he says, his voice hard, but not without a trace of hesitation. We've been instructed to remove you from the property. We're not here to negotiate. You meet his eyes, your heart steady, your breath even. I'm not going anywhere. You can take your orders and get back in your cars. The man sneers. This is your final warning. The HOA has decided. But before he can finish, Sarah interrupts him, her voice low, cutting through the air like a blade. If you continue this, you'll regret it. You're trespassing, and I won't let you cross that line. I've been in worse situations than this, and you're out of your depth. The tension hangs in the air as the men exchange uncertain glances. They weren't expecting someone like Sarah to stand her ground, someone who's been through hell and back, someone with the kind of training that makes it clear they're not just dealing with a homeowner. They're dealing with someone who has the power to end this before it even begins. The enforcer in charge looks back at his men, his eyes narrowing. Do it, he growls, his voice laced with frustration. But as they start to move, Sarah takes a step forward, positioning herself between them and your home. Her posture is defensive, her body language unyielding. You're not taking one step further, she says, her voice unwavering. You want a fight? You've got one. But know this, you won't win. For a moment, everything goes still. It's a standoff, a silent battle of wills. The men are clearly unsure of how to respond. They were hired to intimidate, to remove you from your home, but they didn't expect someone like Sarah standing in their way. The scarred enforcer hesitates for a moment longer, then turns to his team, giving them a signal. They all step back, retreating a few paces, but their eyes remain fixed on Sarah, sizing her up, trying to figure out what to do next. Get back in your vehicles, Sarah commands, her voice firm. We're done here. One by one, the men climb back into the SUVs, the engine noise rumbling as they start the engines. You can see the uncertainty in their eyes, the realization that they've been bested in this moment. Sarah watches them leave, her face hard and unreadable. As the SUVs pull out of your driveway and disappear down the street, the adrenaline starts to fade, leaving you with the quiet weight of what just happened. They came here to evict you, to intimidate you into submission. But they didn't reckon with Sarah. You turn to her, your heart still racing. That was incredible. I don't know how you do it. She doesn't answer right away, her gaze focused on the retreating vehicles. Finally, she turns to you, her expression softening just a fraction. We're not done yet, she says quietly. They'll be back. But now they know we're not backing down. You both know that this victory, small as it is, won't be the end of it. The HOA has already shown that they'll go to extreme lengths to get what they want. But today, Sarah has sent a message loud and clear: you're not going down without a fight. And you're ready for whatever comes next.